Here's another Christmas poem, 1995 on the Catside's Mine Service Garage. 'Twas the week before Christmas as I strolled through the shop and watched everybody slowly come to a stop. The service line crew was heaved back in a chair, while Roy was near savage, just clawing his hair. The Catside was busy, as you all can see. They were up on the catwalk, decorating the tree. When Sarah walked by with his head hanging low, he looked like someone who got caught in the snow. Old Two Shins and Mackie were working quite hard. They had a blade off a tractor out there in the yard. Said Two Shins to Mackie, "I'm going to get sick if I don't go in and get something to eat." Big Stevie the storeman was chatting a storm. He was telling the boys that it was much too warm. As he bent down, I saw a red mark on his neck. I think he was jostled by old brother Rick. On the hill there's a new crew, Mobile 1 and 2, just riding around like there's nothing to do. Dressed up like they are in all their attire, they look like a fireman heading out to a fire. While the Megabyte kid is out checking his truck, old Dan is near frantic, he's bogged down in the muck. And Carl the welder is stirring up shit. I think he's trying to get Ben to fall in the pit. In the corner there's Chester and with him is Joe. Both of them are complaining that we have too much snow. Reggie is screeching in his usual style. He tripped in the pit and got himself full of oil. Ira the welder, so sly as can be, was wrapping a present to put on the tree. In it was some glasses and a big piece of mousse. It was for his old friend, the one called the Goose. Along came old Charlie, and with him was Ted. You could tell he was working, his face was all red. His belly was big, just like Santa's for sure. He just barely made it to the old washroom door. Big Dale, the trapper, was pulling his hair. As he looked out the window, I could hear him swear. I wish that the temperature would drop down below, and then we all need a foot or more snow. Our grumpy old Eli is getting older, you know. He's barely turned 50 when his mind started to go. He might still have his marbles, but they're getting quite few. He gives you a job, then forgets where you're to. Over in number 5, the lights still shine bright, and Bert's in the corner singing "Oh, Holy Night." He called to old Rollo to come join right in, but Rollo just stands there with that sly, silly grin. As I looked out the window, old Habe I could see. He was there in the yard, he was down on one knee. There must be a foreman not far away. Yes, there comes old Bill, and he's hauling a sleigh. The sleigh must be Santa's, and Habe's on the crew that specializes in working when there's not much to do. And as I was watching, old Sandy came near, muttered something about night shift with his head in the hair. When he rounded the corner, I heard a loud noise. I thought he banged into one of the boys. And then I saw Alfie, and he did it once more. He coughed and he spit and let it roll across the floor. Then behind him came Don, the mannerless kid, just belching and burping and shaking his head, as he went to the washroom and slammed shut the door. All over the garage, you could hear him for sure. This year saw retirement for our labourer Joe, replaced by a spruce bough, as you all may know. He stands in the corner for most of the time, just scribbling poetry and making it rhyme. We all were quite lucky this summer for sure, when Maurice the cat strutted in through the door. "This place needs some fixing," and he said, "I'm the one." But before very long he looked like a cat on the run. For the boss's great pleasure and Freddy's great thrill, we have a new thing now called evacuation drill. We gathered in Bay 5 as we ran for our lives, but we all were prepared. We had our new pocket knives. In the office there's a new kid who replaced our old Sean. If this was a game, he'd be just an old pawn. He leans when he walks like a man in a squall, but he looks like a man who was right on the ball. The janitor Brian has his boxing gloves near, looking over his shoulder like he's living in fair. He's scuffing his feet as he's dragging his mop. Looks like somebody was ready to drop. Ivan the doorman with his pipe wrench came by, accused old Wilfie of telling a lie. But Wilfie ignored him and sputtered real fast, tripped over his paint can and fell flat on his ass. Now Gordy the cleaner while washing his clothes tripped on the soap and fell flat on his nose. He got up and giggled and started singing a song. Then he said that his nose was always much too long. I could tell that 'twas nearly time now for lunch, 'cause the boys were all gathered by the door in a bunch. I looked out the window, the weather to see, and there was old Santa, looking right straight at me. He was trimmed down a little from this time last year. He looked a little funny with the grey in his hair. A bulging old bag he had hung round his back, and his shiny red suit it was all trimmed with black. In 1 or 2 minutes he came in through the door. His belly was shaking as he made a loud roar. He struggled and grunted and climbed onto his drum, and bade us all listen to what was to come. Now, as you all know, the times are quite tough. The budget is gone, and there's never enough to buy everything that you all may need. As far as I'm concerned, a lot of it's greed. He started to sweat as the crowd gathered round. Then he pulled on his belly and looked up and down. And sticking his finger up into his nose, he grabbed an old Kim towel and made a few blows. He said to go get old Eli and bring him to me. I don't like the look of that old Christmas tree. And Harvey and Donnie are in for a blast. If they are not careful, they're not going to last. With that he just grunted and said the shop's in a mess. I'm tired now, you know, I must go take a rest. So he grabbed his old sack and climbed up the stair. He stopped on the top and he pulled his fingers through his hair. I couldn't help looking at the mess he was in and wondering if next year he could do it again. He looked like old Santa, but it was hard to tell. But I'm almost convinced that it was Brother Mel. Merry Christmas.